Hi, everyone. I'm Frank Mallicoat. I'm an anchor reporter for KTVU Fox 2 here in the San Francisco Bay Area. My guest is the CEO of TruePublic. It's a Chicago-based mobile opinion platform, and they've done a number of surveys while the pandemic has hit, including distance learning and a love survey for some of the younger folks out there. And we're going to meet their CEO right now. That's Kaben Clauson. How are you?
Doing great, Frank. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. Well, let's jump into TruePublic. Tell our viewers what that's all about.
Yeah, TruePublic is a mobile opinion platform where people all across America are sharing their opinions on politics, on culture, on their dating and love lives. And really, coronavirus has taken over the conversation on TruePublic, just like everywhere else, as people are weighing in, as they're all isolated, on what's really going on in your life today.
I know just about every story we do, it's got a COVID edge. How can it not? Because
Sure.
affecting us all. Well, you did a survey not too long ago on distance learning, how parents are coping with having their kids learn from home, and how the students are learning from home as well. And apparently, neither parents or students are too fired up about this. Tell us, give us just a little outline.
Yeah, I think the headline is a lot of parents out there are going to have to brush up on their algebra really quick, Frank.
Yeah.
It's become a real challenge, I think, with e-learning. What we're seeing is 40% of young Americans today, these are high schoolers and college-age students that are now living at home with their families. They're saying their parents are able to offer zero help. Only 12% of young Americans say that their parents are a big help on their schoolwork. So one of the challenges as we've looked at this e-learning thing, this new normal of being at home when you're learning, is who's there to help you? Without tutors and without teachers there, we're noticing a lot of students having challenges. I think the other big number for you, the big headline is 70%, 7 in 10 young Americans are saying, I'm learning worse now at home than I was before when I was actually able to go to school.
Well, that can't be good. I know parents are busy working from home themselves.
Yep.
And my co-anchors got 3 kids, one in junior high, one in high school, and one in elementary school. And how do you do your job and keep track of them at the same time? It's got to be tough.
And one of the biggest things about learning at home is there was no preparation for this, right? If we go back to when COVID first started, if you would have told me or I would have told you that we would be canceling school in the fall, I think that would have shocked a lot of people. So what we're having is, and we see these comments on TruePublic from not just students, but also parents as well. They were unprepared for the type of learning environment they need. So I do caveat that 7 in 10 who are learning worse, maybe that number gets better as a routine sets in and they start to realize, okay, here's how we're going to run our days. Here's when mom and dad can help. Here's when we can't. Because you're right. These parents this is one of the most challenging times ever. They've got kids at home. They've got jobs. They've got other responsibilities. But what are the biggest distractions at home? There's 2 major ones. One is the environment itself is not conducive to learning. We see a lot of young Americans saying, look, home is where I play video games. It's where I hang out with my friends. It's where I watch my favorite Netflix show. It's not where I'm typically learning all day. So it's really hard to have that temptation right there. And then also we talk about technology temptation. And I'm sure you and I and every person who's in business in this country has done it. When you're on a Zoom call, sometimes it's tempting to go look at the news or check Twitter, right? And go check out something else. And what we're seeing is a lot of young Americans are saying, yeah, I'm really distracted by these other options I have. And with no teacher there to hold you accountable, it's really easy to click over to another tab on your computer.
Well, my niece is a kindergarten teacher in Northern California. She's got 25 new kindergartners, 5-year-olds. I mean, how do you keep them lined up with Zoom going, okay, do that. All right. They're going to walk off and do whatever they want.
It's incredibly challenging. And what we've noticed, though, is interesting because with these learning outcomes being so bad so far, you'd think, okay, let's get kids back into school. And that is a prevalent, an increasingly prevalent opinion out there, right? We've seen a 15% shift actually over the last month and a half of people actually wanting to get kids back into school. That's a nationwide number. Now, much like much else in life today, Frank, there's a political divide. In states that are more conservative, they are much more likely to want to get kids back to school than states that are more traditionally liberal. But the common theme we're noticing is the health crisis has kind of gone above the education crisis, if you will. But there's another one that's really interesting here, and that's the mental health and the happiness of young people. We've been really surprised about how hard COVID has been on the anxiety levels of young Americans. We've seen a 30% increase, 30%, which statistically, we see that as a huge number at TruePublic, of people saying, I'm more anxious today than I was pre-COVID. I'm dealing with anxiety on a weekly basis when I wasn't before. And a lot of that is around the disconnection they're having, especially college students.
Mhm.
College students are at this amazing time in life. They're getting ready for a big career. They've got huge plans. And a lot of them feel like those plans are on hold. And a lot of them feel like they're being robbed of an incredible social season that they had. And it's all made worse by the fact that your tuition might be $40,000 a semester.
And I hate to break it to them, but they're right. I mean, going to school is, meeting people, learning how to cope with situations, and learning those social skills that'll propel you after you learn your academics onto the other side. One thing I think you guys found out as well, that kids are worried about their academics too, especially probably juniors, seniors in high school. Like, well, is this going to get me into my college of choice, and that kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's now 57% who think that COVID's actually threatening their academic progress. So although they're saying they're learning worse, a lot of students still say, okay, well, I'll be fine. But it is now over half. So over half of young Americans are saying they're worried that COVID is actually challenging their progress to college or their progress to their next job. And I think that's meaningful, and that's extremely stressful in this season. And one of the things we're noticing also is, when it comes to these e-learning platforms, one of the biggest gaps here is these school systems, they really haven't been prepared for this at scale. And a lot of those strains are starting to show. They haven't had best practices yet. So I think what we'll find is, if COVID was to continue into further semesters and further months of in-person classes, there's going to have to be some technological solutions. Now, another interesting thing, Frank, about this is, we ask people, what's your ideal schooling situation right now? You could do 100% e-learning. You could do 100% in school. Actually, the favorited solution by parents and students alike across the country is a hybrid approach. So you do a lot of e-learning, but then you have kids go into school on a off and on basis. And what that does is it kind of splits the difference. It's still safer for COVID. You'll have less spread potentially, but you'll still be able to give them some of what they're missing. And frankly, it's funny, when you actually look at the survey data, what are students missing the most? Lunch with friends. It's the simple things in life that are actually the things they're missing the most today, is just going to lunch with some of your friends and having that experience. And that, for many, that's been taken away.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's going to change. But I think a lot of parents in the spring said, all right, we'll get through this. Summer's coming. We'll figure it out. And then lo and behold, August and September here, and they're like, oh, geez, I guess we're in this for the long haul. And I think school districts, too, were kind of thinking the same thing. We'll figure this out, but, And
it's causing conflict. 30%, 3 in 10 are saying, I'm fighting more with my parents around my schooling and around being home so much. So although we can always flip these numbers around, and you could say, well, Kaben, 70% of kids are getting along with their parents just fine. I think that's actually kind of a positive story. I certainly, in some ways, okay, only 3 in 10 are actually having more conflict. Well, that's not too bad, because you can imagine there might be financial stress on the parents. Someone could be sick in the home. There's so much going on in the world, and there's an election coming up. And one of the other interesting things we find out at TruePublic is parents and their young kids, who might be students, don't always agree politically. And that's another area of potential discord right now.
All right. Well, let's shelve that for now. Let's jump into the love survey that you did.
Sure.
With Gen Z'ers, I guess, and Millennials. Over 12,500 people took part in the survey. These are 16 to 35-year-olds. And
yep.
Are we making connections, or are people wigged out about the pandemic?
Well, love is totally changing. And really, how do you find someone in a romantic setting? Before, it was always bars, events, parties, concerts. Those are all out right now. So the big winner, frankly, has been the dating apps. The dating apps have exploded in growth. Dating apps have always been seen, Frank, as a very niche thing. They've always had a bad stigma as a place to meet low quality people, maybe a place to hook up and have a casual relationship, but not a place to meet your future partner, your future husband, your future wife.
Right.
Now what's happened is millions of young Americans have been forced to use dating apps for the first time to try to find someone. And what we're noticing in the data is there's been some businesses, so many businesses have been harmed by COVID. There's a few though that we've noticed at TruePublic that are going to be dramatically helped. One of them is those dating app companies like Tinder, Hinge, Bumble. What they're finding is once people have been forced to go online, they're actually finding love there and finding, okay, it's not maybe ideal, but it works.
All right. So the apps are probably applauding this.
Yeah, the apps are liking it.
Yeah.
And the video call thing's been interesting because imagine what's the typical first date? Dinner, movies, maybe coffee, drinks. Today, a lot of first dates are video calls. 16% of people have already taken a first date over a video call and actually FaceTime someone before they potentially could meet them. And that seems a little awkward potentially. And I think a lot of young Americans are not going to go for that. But we're now seeing almost half are saying, if it came to that and COVID continues, I'm willing to do a first date over FaceTime or over Zoom. Imagine that.
Well, what else are you going to do? You can't go to a bar. You might as well give it a shot. And, and that, and a lot goes into getting prepped for something like this. But if you're going to meet someone potentially for a relationship or a date or two, I mean, you're probably getting all nervous and just, is my background okay? Do I have the right clothes on? And all that kind of stuff as well. Yeah.
Dating used to just be about what you're wearing, but now it's like what's behind your camera. You better get that tight too. So that's been fascinating to watch that unfold.
I know a lot of people I'm obviously reporting from home, and I watch other reporters here in the Bay Area, and I go, oh, I went to the University of Colorado. I got a picture of my dad's 64 Olds Cutlass back there, and it's been up for a while. And I've had, I don't know, probably a dozen people either send me a tweet or an email like, hey, what kind of car is that, Frank? So it is a brave new world, that's for sure.
And they're always asking me, which books am I reading? So I try to keep those.
Can you name those books behind you?
I've read them. I have read them. I can't name them off the top of my head, but.
Well, let's talk about sex if we can. Are these two groups, are they intimate more often, or is the pandemic kind of shut that down as well?
Yeah, 33% are reporting they're having less sex. And especially, so this is a funny story about COVID in some ways. The person who was having lots of partners before, but maybe not with one partner, suddenly was in a really bad place during COVID, to be frank. This is a bad time to be a player. Let's just put it really frankly, okay? Because now suddenly you couldn't meet people. So what we are seeing is sex numbers are lower among young singles across America. Funny enough, though, we did a separate survey of people who are married or living together. Sex is actually up for married couples, and it's up for people that are living together. So that's a great positive. But what we're noticing in the data is that 33% are having less sex, and increasingly, we run a weekly tracking survey, and we ask people how happy they are with their love life. That number has never been lower among singles. What we ask is, are you happy with your love life and your future love prospects? That number is now below 20% of people who are happy with their love life. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that people are extremely lonely and they haven't been able to meet. And the dating apps, as much as we just talked about how great they are, they're not fully cutting it for people.
I get it. I do feel sorry for those that don't have a significant other. I mean, sitting at home all day, working from home, sneaking out to the grocery store isn't, I don't know, my idea of a fun and sexy life, but there's a lot of folks out there that are living that life.
Yeah, it's tough. And the other thing that I found so interesting in the survey, Frank, was COVID has really, in many cases, some people are not caring about meeting, and a lot of TruePublic people even have commented and told their stories about how ultimately they've just decided that they would rather meet people and risk getting COVID and risk spreading COVID. But there's a lot of Americans, almost half of Americans are just unwilling to meet someone in person still. So when you have that dynamic, you've taken half of the dating pool completely off of your chances, and now you're just with a 50% group that might be more risky, a 50% group that might be leaning slightly more conservative. I mean, these are some of the interesting dating funny things that are happening now with people just based on this unprecedented situation.
Tell us how you pick the people. Do they pick you? Do they go to your platform? You have the questions there, they fill it out. How does that work?
Yeah. So when we looked at this problem, we thought it's almost impossible to poll young people today, because the traditional methods were a telephone poll. No one really answers those anymore. And paid surveys really weren't working with younger Americans. So when we looked at the problem at TruePublic, we thought we have to make it fun and engaging for them. So our methodology is to bring in hundreds of thousands from all over America, make it fun. And then we have data scientists and researchers at TruePublic that take the time and energy to make sure the data is really balanced statistically. So we want to make sure we have enough men, women, people of different ethnicities, different political persuasions. And our goal really at TruePublic is to create a mini America, if you will. And right now that mini America is of young Americans. And over time, we're continuing to get more and more in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. We're going to be able to have a complete picture of the country that I think is going to be quite accurate for how people feel about things. And one other point on that, the reason TruePublic works so well is the anonymity. Because people are totally anonymous, people can admit very frankly to questions around sex, religion, politics. Our data on the political world is always fascinating. People admit to things you might not admit in polite society, and you certainly wouldn't post on your Facebook page.
I was going to say, yeah, how you feel about some of these things would not fly on social media.
That is true.
David, if people want to get in touch with you or be a part of your platform, how do they do it?
Yeah, just go to truepublic.com. That's a great way to get in touch with the business and see how we can maybe be helpful to you. But really, for most of your viewers, just go to TruePublic, search for TruePublic in the iPhone or Android App Store, and you can begin to share your opinions. And while we're all isolated during this time, this is really the best time to be on TruePublic, because you're isolated at home, but you can get a sense of community of what's going on with people in California, in Illinois, in New York, and across our entire country, and where do people really stand?
And what are some of the other topics you guys have explored?
We've explored the race situation, the police situation has been a fascinating one. That's been a really hot topic. Obviously, the election has been huge. But in addition to that, it comes into health, entertainment. And one of our most popular categories actually has been marriage and dating. That's really, I think, the one that drives more people than ever, because that's a topic you maybe can't imagine. You're a young man, you're 23. It's really hard maybe to ask women for dating advice. On TruePublic, you can have 50,000 women weigh in on your question and give you some feedback. And I think that's a pretty powerful thing. And
get an array of answers too, I might imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
Great stuff. All right, he is Kaben Clauson. He is the CEO of TruePublic outside of Chicago. I want to thank you for joining us. Great stuff.
Thank you, Frank.
All right, I'm Frank Mallicoat here in the Bay Area. Have a great day, everybody.